Serious, Redditors who were once homeless. What was the scariest, creepiest part about being out in the streets? My family was homeless for about 3 months when I was 14, so I only have a kid's perspective. Long story short, my sick-head sister fooled my parents into moving into her crack hut with her and her family, and things just plummeted immediately from there. My sister somehow managed to get access to my parents' bank account and drained their checking and savings account. My parents had absolutely no money. Crap went down and my sister and her husband kicked us out of the house. My parents weren't on the lease, so we had to leave. Hardly any money. We didn't know anyone else, so we went to a motel, and that was where we were for 3 months. It's not necessarily on the streets, but there's still that sense of unknown and fear you won't get out of your current situation. And it was hard because motels cost money as well. So my parents were probably paying about $400 a week to stay in a motel, which was probably a third of their weekly income combined. All the while struggling to save up for the down payment on a house, feed me, and eventually 4 kids, my sister's kids, and more. Being a kid and having no control over my situation and the unknown was the scariest part. I was worried my parents would be at risk of having me taken away because they weren't providing enough for me. I didn't resent them, by the way. They were doing what they could. Or worse, I was worried eventually we wouldn't be able to afford to stay in a motel. It was also embarrassing. Our old apartment wasn't too far from the motel we were staying in, so I went back to taking my usual bus home from school, and the bus stopped right in front of the motel. So I'd awkwardly stand around and wait for the other kids to walk home before turning around and going into the motel. Most people subconsciously believe that there are less consequences involved in killing a homeless person than a regular person. I was hit as a pedestrian by someone who ran a red and then left for dead because who cares, right? Long story short, I was living in a house and was kicked out by the landlord with no notice. The scariest part about being homeless for me was having to give up my dog. He was my best friend, first pet, and only means of mental comfort. On top of it all, I had to give the shelter my last $100 as an abandonment fee because I wanted him to have a chance at finding a new home rather than dumping him off in the wild. I cried like a baby in front of everyone. Thank you all for the kind words. It really means a lot. All is well with me now. With the help from friends and family, I got back on my feet and am living happily. I like to think my pup found a good home. He was a hard one to ignore. Was homeless, squatting in an office building with motion detector lights that turn on at 1 AM when no one was supposed to be in the building. Then hearing footsteps go past the room you're crashing in. Frick that. Also, the cold. Not quite scary or creepy per se, but when the heating's off, it's winter, it's Wales, the radiator slowly loses its warmth. You're wearing 3 jumpers and 3 pairs of socks, but the cold buries itself into your chest. It's so cold the bones in the top of your feet hurt like heck, and you don't know if you should be worried about that. And you're scared you won't sleep because the floor's so hard and you can't stop shivering, but you need to sleep if you want to escape this nightmare existence. Also knowing that the people you never thought you could relate to but now identify with are doing worse. In the freezing rain, not with a lot of the knowledge you've sadly now got, unwashed, addicted to proud Swansean, and dying. Also, having to rely on Redditors to donate razors. I pray I never have to return to that existence, and that no one reading this should suffer it. Sorry I didn't really answer the question that well. Also, foxes. I love them. But waking up under a shop alcove to what sounds like a dying woman, vixen in heat, is scary as frick. Pretty powerful. I hope you don't have to go through that again. Crows at night make the same noise as the predator stalking its prey in the movie. That crackly sound. You can't sleep for too long for a number of reasons. 1. If it's on concrete and you stay still too long, you get bruises. 2. Longer time asleep equals more risk of someone finding you who isn't going to be nice. 3. Risk of hypothermia if you stay too cold too long. Health is constantly being taxed. Infection is a much bigger risk. Infection will frick you up. Usually, if someone wants to kill or kidnap you, you won't be in a position for people to know about it. A scary thought is that you could disappear and die before anyone even knows you're in trouble. Though that can certainly happen in all walks of life and scenarios though. No real safe place. When you have no home, you have nowhere to hide or run to when you're in trouble. I lived in a mix of cars, a van, and on the streets themselves for around a year in my teens. One night when I was sleeping in the back of my van, which had a broken door so it couldn't lock, one of the other street workers ripped open my door and started threatening me and demanding I give her the money I'd made that night. I said I hadn't worked that night so had no money. I can't remember if this was a lie or not, and that got her to go away long enough for me to leave my van unnoticed. But then, there was nowhere to go. It was the middle of the night, there was someone who wanted to beat me up. She'd already given me a smack and taken money off me before cause I'm not a fighter at all and she was much bigger and tougher, and robbed me, and there was no one who cared or could help. It's a pretty tough thing to deal with. You really feel alone. Completely separate from society, like you're not on the same level as other people. I eventually ended up finding a 24-hour internet cafe and the workers let me hang out in there all night. And the next day, I still had to go back to my van. As a young woman, men offering to help and then realizing their intentions were actually physical, let's get you something to eat, some clean clothes, go back to my place, and even creepier, men trying to buy me, not just for a night but like as a long-term deal. One guy just pulled out a roll of bills while I was sitting in the sidewalk and started at $500. Kept upping the number every time I said no. I ran once I realized he wasn't listening and possibly wasn't going to take no for an answer. I now carry cards for the local women's safe place and hand them out to women I see on the streets. Glad that's not my life anymore. Goodness yes. One time I kept saying no, and he kept rambling off higher numbers. I felt like I was at an auction. When you're sleeping under a fire escape in downtown Chicago with all your possessions next to you in an alley, wasn't really sleep, just a half nightmare of waking up next to a thief or murderer. Also, as another commentator said, how little you matter. You'd think if you were homeless and hungry on the street you're gonna be saved by some stranger, or you think people will know about your situation and show sympathy. Nothing unusual, you're just another person walking to wherever you gotta go. Where are you going? You don't even know yourself. You're just another human being, except you don't have a place to put your tired body at night or somewhere to make your only meal of the day. How do you even go to a job interview when you shower at a gym and sleep on the side of the railroad tracks if a friend can't take you in? I had to do it, I wanted to do it, and I wasn't freaking special from anybody else. Got myself clean. Ironed my best one of 2 shirts and pair of khakis I had in my backpack for a week, cleaned my shoes with my fingers and went to the goddamn office. Except you don't have a place to put your tired body at night or somewhere to make your only meal of the day. Well put. That's one of the hardest parts. There is nowhere home. There is nowhere to go to. You're without, and people who haven't been there cannot understand this situation. Getting in a car with a man to turn a trick for some drug money, but realizing I was about to be part of some flesh trafficking ring. I jumped out of his car at a stoplight and ran to the nearest gas station. I told the clerks that a man would be coming after me and to tell him to leave or they'd call the cops. Sure enough, he came looking for me, but after the threats from the staff, he left. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour before I felt safe enough to come out. I have lived in Barcelona, Spain on the streets for quite some time. The creepiest part in my opinion is how fast you accept your homelessness and how fast you get used to it. You learn to be homeless. You learn to survive by your own. I remember the moment I got inside my sleeping bag and felt embraced and comfortable. I had forgotten what it was to have a bed and sheets. But your brain keeps you on survival mode and you just adjust. After little more than a month, you become so used to it that you stop looking for ways to get out of there. Scariest thing for me was how hungry I was. Don't know if that makes sense, but when you're really hungry you start to lose your mind, and that was terrifying to me. I'll never forget trying to steal fruit from the stands in Brooklyn at 4 AM just so I can eat. Fricked up. When I was a young kid, my pedophile dad thought it was fun to starve me for days on end. Being really hungry sucks. Like you say, your mind goes funny. I felt weak and tired all the time, too. Once whilst it was raining heavily I took shelter under an entrance to a market, and it was a decent sized area. It's now about 11 PM. I decide to try and get a kip in me and lay down. It's student night so it's quite loud, but I soon dozed off. I was woken up by the sound of a lady no less than 10 feet away from me squatting, just flat out taking a pee. Her friend's just being drunk. I don't think they ever noticed me. I just kinda froze. Had that their vision is based on movement crap go through my head. Overpasses at the top are good places to sleep. Get some earplugs, take a blanket and roll it up long ways and put it against your side as a barrier to stop you from rolling off. When I was homeless there was one in between the job I had and the truck stop. Truckers get free showers with fuel ups, and it tell them I'm not asking for money. I just got this job, I am stuck on the street, I need a shower for work so I can get off the street. If you have an extra shower credit it would really help me out, because I can't afford to pay for it and I can't lose this job, they will generally help out. I was homeless for a little bit when I was about 15-16 years old. My father had just passed away and my mother wasn't exactly the greatest person in the world. Since she told the court she didn't want me, they sent me to the children's home, which was supposed to be a form of punishment for most, but since I had been in juvenile jail for 90 days they couldn't hold me there any longer. So the children's home is where I went to. Upon arrival at the children's home I was given a pamphlet with the rules. They put me at a desk in the hallway and was asked to write the rules 100x each. There was about 25 rules in the book. I thought this was just the initial phase for anyone being brought in and that the next day I would be allowed to join the others in the rec room. Nope. Found out that they have levels and no matter who you are you start at level 0. This basically means that the hallway is your entire life until the people running the facility decided you were okay to move to level 1, which allows you to freely use the restrooms and sit in a different room in a more comfortable chair, and you didn't have to write any more sentences. Well, I got tired of this crap really fast. Felt as if I was being punished for my father passing away. So first opportunity I got I ran away from the place. Tried going to my mom's house but she just called the police. Tried contacting other family members and pleading with them to help me out, but all of them pretty much said no. This all happened in Ohio during the peak of winter. Without anywhere to go I started looking around my area for a place to rest my neck. Found an abandoned factory that had a couple couches laid upside down against the back wall. So I pushed them together and tossed a tarp over the entire thing. This place was pretty much my home for about 2 weeks. I would wake up just about every 5 meters shivering. After about 2 weeks I got caught by my newly appointed probation officer while I was riding a friend's bicycle around town. They put me back in juvenile for about a week, then released me back to the children's home again. The next day when I woke up at the children's home I got up and took a pee. Then my PO came into the room and told me to get ready to go get a pee test done at the labs. We got to the labs but I didn't have to pee since I had just gone. So then my PO starts forcing me to down a bunch of water. I had to have drank about half of one of those upside down jugs. I started feeling really sick and the PO just kept making me drink more and more water. I finally had to pee and took the test for the PO. It came back pretty quick as negative for drugs. So she brought me back to the children's home. I immediately said frick this crap and ran away again. After running away I got back to my little camping spot again and started throwing up tons of water. It seemed as though I threw up about 3x more than I drank. The scariest part was that after paying into the system for well over 16 years, I was suddenly disabled. It takes 2 years, a rejection and an appeal to receive disability. The waiting list for housing assistance is up to 2 years, and shelters only let you stay for a max of 2 weeks. So me and my 2-year-old daughter were in a shelter about to get kicked out on our butt when luckily my parents let us move into an old house on their property, which would have been condemned if it had been inspected, but still better than nothing. This probably wasn't the type of story you were looking for, but it's pretty freaking scary how non-existent the social safety net is in the US, and people just want to keep whittling away at it. You never think something like this will happen to you, until it does. Any stories are welcome. This actually does scare me. I think we are all closer to being homeless than we think. That's scary to me. One that comes to mind is the pain of carrying your life with you everywhere you go. My experience is not the regular homeless experience, as I quickly got the chance to live in a shelter for the homeless. I was also lucky to have a suitcase to carry my stuff around. But imagine how heavy and tiring it is to constantly have to carry every single thing you own all day, every day. And the terror of being robbed of it was crushing. It also makes everything much slower and more difficult. Imagine having to walk back and forth to many administrations, to the charity to eat, then to a place to sleep, while carrying what amounts to a dead horse. It sucks the life out of you. I was homeless and crashing in a single berth caravan in Enfield during the Good Friday storm of 1994. If it wasn't for the shed wall next to the caravan it would have rolled. The caravan kept rocking over and banging the shed wall all night. I go back and forth on if I was homeless or not. When I got out of the military, I had no family to go back to. I crashed at friends' houses and turned wherever I went into a drug party. After I felt I wore out my welcome, I'd rotate to another friend's house. I was living off my deployment money. The worst thing for me was the lack of hope and safety. Watching my parents cry. They were always that strong, reliable force that were like superheroes to me, but to see them cry because they were hungry, tired, stressed, dirty, all to try and make sure I got to school and had semi-clean clothes and had a bit of food in my stomach. That scared me to finally see them both cry one night in our car we were sleeping in. I think the scariest part is just the way you are viewed by society and family. This is a situation you created and must shoulder all the blame for. Empathy is hard to come by. I was kicked out of my house for being gay when I was 16 and got a special legal emancipation. I initially shared a 2-bedroom apartment with 9 other people. The girl who lived there let the lease expire and everyone got kicked out. This was right when rave club culture were hitting critical mass, so I managed to plow my way into lots of sofa hopping. Worst case scenario, I would stay up all night and just sleep on the beach during the day. Eventually I squatted with 2 other people out of 1 room and 1 bathroom in an abandoned and dilapidated house. We managed to get utilities turned on, even cable, and that worked out for about 5 months. We came home one day to cop cars and all our stuff out on the street. There were drugs in the house, but the cops didn't arrest anyone and let us call people to help us move our stuff. Shortly after I met someone and moved in with them, and that finally ended about 2 years of unstable housing homelessness. Once you're homeless, you are no longer a person. People do not pay attention to you and treat you as if you don't exist. If you smile at someone, they look away. It's the worst feeling. I was homeless as a teenager and I got constant harassment from the police, but never once did a cop ask why a 16-year-old was sleeping in the stairwell, park, or abandoned building. They would take my ID, ask a bunch of questions about graffiti and vandalism, and then tell me to get lost. I was happy to be let go, but looking back as a father, what the heck were they thinking? Disease or getting sick. My biggest fear when I was homeless was getting deathly ill just from the conditions. Keep your feet dry and always have extra clothes. Medicine is expensive, and if there isn't a porta potty on a construction site, you hope for tall weeds. Try and take care of yourself as much as you can because the hospital is unaffordable in the States. Always keeping an eye open for cops coming to help relocate you. I had a car. You would be surprised how few places you can park that simultaneously are safe from being robbed and safe from being disturbed by cops who will want to field sobriety test you every single time. Was homeless at 18. Roughest part was being found. I was camped under a bridge in a gated area. The area was designed as a storage area for construction equipment. I had holed up there for 4 months with no issue. One morning a couple kids from the local HS found my spot and while I was sleeping made an attempt to steal my bag. It had some basic stuff. I woke and scattered to grab my stuff. They took off fast. That night cops came by and told me to go home. I'm too young to be homeless. The cops were kind but stern. It was the kids that were buttholes. Today I live in my car, and being in SoCal, the heat is a big deal. Trying to sleep in a car that is around 90 degrees is difficult. Not wanting to keep windows open so people can't steal my stuff. I have a job and am working hard to get out of my situation. One thing I would recommend is to go to any Gurdwara, Sikh place of worship, which is open to all. Anyone can get a free fresh cooked meal and a place to stay. All that is asked in return is that you be respectful. You can be in the process of dying, breathing your last breaths on your cardboard mattress, and no one will notice as they walk right on by you. I saw that happen to an older gentleman who was also homeless. The scariest and most depressing thing in the world is being ignored when you need it most. Having people shy away from you when you're trying to ask for help. And you know they have their reasons. There are fakers out there and those who prey on generosity, but there are also those whose luck has run out and the only way out is for someone else to stick their neck out for them. To this day every bone in my body aches when I see someone homeless. But you can't help them all. You don't always have cash on you. You don't always have food on you. And by time you are back with something they are gone with no sign of which way they went. So, not only are you invisible to most, but the portion that does see you has to see you when they can help you because they might only see you once. I was 15 on the streets for 6 months. Slept under a bridge, I guess, to add to the stereotype. Scariest thing was feeling like that was my peak in life. I honestly thought that was it. I'm 30 now, have 4 kids, a nice house, and a beautiful wife. Life is good. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.